It's always a pleasure to be on ETBFSI platform. Over the last 2-3 years, we have been doing it online, and today, meeting up with all the fellow panelists as well as industry stalwarts in this kind of event in person has been a very good experience. Exchanging views and understanding how trends are evolving in various segments, not only in the business or asset classes where we are present, but in other asset classes as well. It's always a good I would say opportunity, and we look forward for these kind of interactions. So as I had mentioned in the panel also, I personally don't feel that NBFCs were ever in a shadow. NBFCs had their own established business models in which they've been pretty successful over the period in terms of raising capital, leveraging debt, delivering sustainable returns to our shareholders, and catering to that segment of customers, geography, asset classes, which possibly was not having access to formal banking credit, and that's something which we've been able to execute successfully over the period over the last few decades. And I believe the contribution that NBFCs have made in broad-basing credit and therefore growth for the overall economy is something possibly is still not noticed, and that's where this concept of we being shadow to banks comes into play. I clearly feel that we have our own segments and our own strengths compared to banks, and that's where we excel, and that's something we therefore for me to re-emphasize the fact that we were never in a shadow, and therefore emerging out of the shadow, it doesn't come into play. So in the current scheme of things, if you look at it, what your statement is absolutely right, because the way we have seen in the recent past, where most of the NBFCs have now gone bank heavy, because we have seen capital market subscribing to NBFC papers coming down, especially after what we saw in 2018, and SEBI bringing down the overall cap for mutual funds from 25 to 20% has been pretty limiting for most of we NBFCs, and therefore our dominance for or looking at banks have gone up. But as we move forward, I clearly feel asset build-up, given the way the economy is kind of growing, the demographic of the country is, asset build-up may not be much of a problem. We all have our strengths, which has been tested over the period. We have been through cycles, and therefore we are well equipped to look at growing the book. But liabilities will be where the challenge would be, and that's in any case the biggest line item for us in terms of our cost. So that's something which broad-basing liabilities and coming out of or having the concentration of banks kind of coming down is something which all NBFCs would be kind of the challenge that they will be looking at going forward, and that's something which will be critical in terms of success in times to come. No, I personally feel that all the regulatory initiatives which have come in will only allow NBFCs to become much more strong, or the strength of the NBFCs will only go up, and that is something what the regulator also requires this segment to be. So personally, I'm for regulations coming in. It's very good that we have the convergence of banks and NBFCs in terms from a regulatory perspective happening. It will only strengthen the NBFC positioning going forward, and for them to build the books. What hitherto we have seen NBFCs were catering to the smaller, in terms of their book size compared to banks were much smaller, but that's not the case anymore. As we grow ahead and we are making massive leaps in terms of our growth, regulatory interventions and regulatory help in navigating through various challenges, both environmental and otherwise, is always going to be help, and it will strengthen the NBFCs going forward.